Good morning. Thanks for joining me this morning. I want to start off today's session. We're going to talk about earnest money, the earnest money dispute resolution. Seems to be coming up more and more often. We get through and there's a dispute over the earnest money, right? And I just kind of want to go over the process with you. So one party has to terminate the contract, right? So buy side, sell side, I don't care which side, right? And in the termination, you put where the earnest money goes, right? A lot of people on the buy side, we'll just pretend we're the buy side in this, will send that termination over to the listing agent to terminate with the buyer getting earnest money. And the listing agent goes, oh, no, my seller is due the earnest money, right? That doesn't actually start the dispute resolution, right? You can kind of use that, but it's better for you to get the listing agent to have their seller sign the termination, releasing the money, scratch through to the seller. That will give us a written argument to dispute it, right? So how this works is once we have that dispute over it, the holder of the earnest money, and I'll be the holder in this transaction because I'm actually going to be doing this in about 10 minutes, has to read through the entire contract and interpret it to make a decision who gets the earnest money, right? In this instance, I have reviewed the contract. The dispute was over repairs that were to be completed within 7 days of closing, right? So these repairs, it was a very specific list of repairs that were supposed to be done. And so those repairs weren't done prior to closing, right? So it's kind of an easy interpretation from that aspect, right? Except our agent let the contract expire and didn't do the request or make any comment of it within that 7 days prior to closing that all these repairs were to be completed. The repairs weren't complete. They're saying, the listing agent is saying they're not communicating. The buyer's agent said, I told you, and you're just supposed to do the repairs. Well, the close date came on Friday and passed, right? So on Monday, the agent sends a unilateral termination for seller failing to close due to not completing the repairs in a timely manner. It's a legal reason to terminate, right? And so I get this, I read it, and so I have to do what's called a 10-day letter. It basically lays out that I have reviewed and interpreted the contract as the holder and am making the decision that the buyer gets the earnest money, right? In that 10-day window, the listing agent and seller have the right to dispute the earnest money, okay? So this listing agent comes back and says, we never heard anything from you about the repairs. We thought it was good. We thought we were good to go. So the seller should get the earnest money. So they're making a dispute and they have to do a formal written response to me. They just did it in an email, but I need a formal written response in order to contemplate. And then as the holder, I have options, right? So I've made my interpretation of the contract. I can 100% stick to that interpretation and say, after reviewing your rebuttal, I am still going to give the money to the buyer. Or I can reverse my decision and give the money to the seller if it makes sense at what they're saying, if that's the interpretation of the contract, if it was in writing, right? Or I can interplead it into the courts, which nobody wants, right? So interpleader actions, oh, that's a nightmare. So say it's $5,000 earnest money and I have valid arguments on both sides. As the holder, I don't have to make a decision. I can interplead it into the courts, right? And that interpleader action, what happens is both sides have to go make a claim for it and they go in front of a judge or I just lost the word for it. Mediator. Thank you, Tracy. They will go in front of a mediator. It'll all be decided. Most likely it's going to end up in front of a judge and you're going to end up with attorneys, right? The prevailing party in that also gets their attorney's fees. So interpleader actions are never going to be good. That's why we have one agent who you've heard multiple times has had money in the courts for 5-6 years now, right? because you start spending money. If you lose, you're going to have to pay the other party's attorney's fees to get it. So that money is abandoned money. Who knows what's ever going to happen to it? Probably nothing ever, right? Not my decision. As the holder, if I make a decision and the other party doesn't like it, they can't sue me, right? They can't do anything. When you are wrong, you miss something, and I have to give our buyer's earnest money to the seller side, the buyer's going to get very mad at us, even though it was a missed deadline or whatever. One thing that y'all can do, we have made it very, very easy here for y'all to deposit earnest money with us. You can always have the lender hold the earnest money though. I'm sorry, the lender, the closing attorney. The lender would like to hold the earnest money. No, the closing attorney hold the earnest money, right? All that makes sense? It's kind of a long process that runs out. I will tell you as the holder, I haven't done anything with this decision yet. I've just seen little bits and pieces. I haven't actually read and interpreted the contract, so I'm just kind of giving you scenarios. I'm going to allow for a cooling off period between the two of them. That's something that I can do as the holder, and I don't have to make a decision today. I can wait a week. I can wait a month. I can, I have to make a decision at some point, but I don't have to do it today. And there is no timeline for that decision, right? So if y'all ever get put in a situation like that with earnest money, come talk to me. I'll walk you through it again. All right, I don't expect anybody to remember this today, but we're here for you. We'll answer the questions. And that's kind of what I wanted to start off talking about today. Do y'all have questions? Yeah, that's Tracy.
So I'm a little late getting in, but the scenario you just shared, that was from the buyer?
Yes, we represent the buyer in that transaction. We're the holder of earnest money, and there's repairs done.
How often do list brokerages require their listings to be the holders of the earnest money?
How often do brokers require that their listing holds the earnest money? It's all a negotiation.
Oh, okay.
It's all a negotiation. If you're fighting over who's holder of the earnest money versus getting the deal done, I would get the deal done instead of worrying about who the holder is. As a holder, so I have to make this interpretation of the contract, right? They can't sue me, but any party can report the whole situation to the Georgia Real Estate Commission, and Grec will come in and audit my file and ask for how I interpreted this, right? And with that, as the holder, I have to make a decision. It doesn't have to be now, but I have to make a decision or I can lose my license. I have to make the right decision or I can be deemed incompetent and lose my license, right? So at some point I have to make a decision, and I can't make a decision based on feelings and emotions, right? And if the attorney is the holder, you can blame it all on the bad attorney, right? Like we fought for it, we tried to get it. At the end of the day though, if you don't miss a deadline, you don't have a problem. The earnest money's safe, right? Never miss a deadline. So if you're coming up, due diligence is due today, you have an amendment over, they haven't signed it, terminate it to protect the buyer's earnest money. You can always put the deal back together. There's a reinstatement of contract form that was introduced about 3 years ago that you can use to just immediately put a contract back together after a unilateral. Make sense? Other questions? No? Other things outside of earnest money that are on your mind? No? Quiet? You want me to keep talking about earnest money? The 601.
I understand that
601.
the sale.
Oh, the sale contingency exhibit.
I understand it is complicated.
A sale contingency exhibit. All right, let's talk about this real quick. It is saying that our buyer, will represent the buyer in this as well, right? Our buyer cannot purchase 123 Main Street without selling 456 First Ave, right? Yeah. The entire contract is contingent on 456 First Street selling, right? The old property. I'll just use old and new property, right? So that's the basis of the whole thing. That's the very basic level of it. Now, what you're talking about is when you get into it being for sale or for lease. There's two options there, so you have the choice to say it's for sale for X amount of dollars, or it's under contract with this agent for X amount of dollars, whatever the status of old home is, or if they're trying to lease it as well, if that's an option. They have that as an option, right? So all that's pretty laid out. But then you get to page 2 of it with the kick-out clause. All right, so the kick-out clause in MLS, that's actually active under contract. Whenever you see a property in MLS, it should have a kick-out clause, which is a clause that allows the seller to force the buyer to perform, right? And with the kick-out clause, you have all the contingencies listed out, as well as all contingencies are removed from the contract, or none of them are moved, right? Or any individual ones. From a negotiating standpoint, the buyer, you don't want a kick-out clause. You don't want the seller to be able to continue to market the property active under contract, accept offers that may be better than yours and kick you out, right? Or force you to make a decision on whether you want to move forward with depositing additional earnest money and forcing you to remove contingencies, right? So that's what the kick out is. The buy side, you want no kick out. The sell side, you want everything to be kicked out, right? And again, it's all a negotiation. So the better you can negotiate, the better deal you will get for your client. Put additional earnest money up when you do a kick out clause, you know what I mean? But keep certain aspects of it. Kick out clauses, why use them?
Well, because the buyer needs to sell first.
The buyer needs to sell first to be able to.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to use.
And he doesn't want to use easy
I
buy.
proposed and he said, the first thing he said was,
What are the fees?
What's the catch? I said, it's a 1.9%
Fee.
fee. And he
Yep.
said, no, I'll help.
What's the purchase price on it? Let's walk through this scenario.
$575.
$575. If you offered $550 cash with no contingencies, do you think they'd accept it?
No, it was highest and best.
It was the highest and best. If you offered $570 cash, no closing costs, would they have accepted it possibly? You don't know what the other offers are, right?
No, and I don't know that cash is king right now.
You don't know that cash is king right now.
Yeah,
Why do you say that?
because sometimes I feel like, or I feel like whenever you receive a cash offer,
Yep.
they just want to see the house, and once they see the house, then I have it under contract to go see the house, and once they see it, they'll drop you $40,000-$50,000.
Okay. That's not always the case.
Yeah, it's not always the case.
That is what all bets are won.
Experience?
All bets are won on the first tee box. No, that's all in your negotiations. They need to understand that. I mean, if you're the only offer on the table and you're at $570 cash and you're thinking that people are going to reduce 40 to 50 on you, okay, that may be what it is. That price reduction is now a negotiation, and you may stand strong. Hey, present it to the seller. If the seller says no, I'm not reducing it that far. No. That's not your house at the end of the day, but you're trying to get the best deal, right? And if you shorten that due diligence period, what would y'all say is a fast due diligence period that is acceptable? What would you say?
3 days.
3 days, right? Your house is off the market for 3 days
But
to see
then
if they're going to come back and ask for a price reduction.
But then people is gonna think that the house is bad. No, not that the buyer was reducing after 2 days.
All right. Yeah, I think you're reading too much into it. I think you're making assumptions.
It's happened to me.
Like,
it's back
because it's back on market and they think it is?
What's wrong with the house? That's the first thing people say.
What's wrong with the house? Nothing. This buyer came in and requested a $50,000 price reduction after it went on the market, or after it went under contract. Seller said, no, they're not giving you that. Next buyer. I mean, like, so what I would say to it is you're overthinking it and getting too emotional with it. No, just put it back on the market. Let's get another offer. Every house will sell at a certain price, right? So don't worry about it going back on market. Put back on market due to no fault to seller. No fault to seller.
I've never seen one that says fault to the
Fault of the seller, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether you put that or you leave the comments the same, right?
fault to the seller.
Yep.
Fault to the house being.
But if it was off the market for 3 days, right? No big deal. No big deal at the end of the day. Go ahead, Jasmine.
I have a question about the part in the contract that says, in consideration of the amount of $10.
All right.
What is that?
The in consideration part? All right,
Yeah.
so Jasmine has a question about the in consideration from one party, $10 to the other party and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
To make a contract binding in the state of Georgia, you must have consideration. Earnest money is not the consideration. That paragraph is what makes it a legally binding contract in the state of Georgia. And it's saying here, I'll give you $10. You give me $10? Perfect. That's our consideration.
And they have that like from the earnest money technically?
No, the consideration is that paragraph in a contract that makes it legally binding.
Like you're thinking about the $10. Not
No, there's no thinking about it. It's an exchange of $10. Do you have $10 on you?
No.
Do you have any money on you? Like I don't. Do you have any money on you, Miguel? You got $10. Pretend you have $10.
Okay, yeah.
It's me going. Oh, okay. Here,
$1,000.
here. Let's sign this contract. Here's $10. You give me $10. It's a legally binding contract.
But
That's the consideration that makes it binding.
Yeah.
The money doesn't exchange. It's nominal. It's nominal. I'm giving you $10. You're giving me $10. So why do I need to give you $10 if you're giving me $10? We'll just keep our $10 and call it.
I had a
No, it's a vice versa. Yes.
I had a buyer yet.
Each party gives to the other $10.
So you don't really need to.
Yes, we could exchange $10, but it's nominal. I mean, it's
I had a buyer get mad at me because he wasn't reducing or he wasn't accepting a reduced price of $10. Like, or, you know, 'cause he thought that the $10 were the one being contributed towards
closing costs. No, yeah.
$10?
What are we gonna do with $10?
No, sir, that's just verbiage. I don't really know what that means.
Well, not. So it's just you tell great. Tell your client that's just verbiage. I don't know what it means. No, that's fine. When that happens, call the broker hotline. That's what we're here for, right? So call them.
That was like
Yeah,
my first.
yep. But call and say, what does this mean? Like we literally, that question came up last night, and I have to call one of our agents back to explain it. So I'm glad you brought it up.
It's funny because I think it's the same agent
Yeah.
that asked me and I didn't know the answer.
Okay, yeah. So I have that on my to-do list to call that agent back, right? So, yes, it's what makes it a legally binding contract. There is consideration. That's why like the seller due diligence period. You've seen that. We have that seller due diligence stipulation. That's why the extra verbiage is at the end there. It's, for in consideration. So that's why those legal blurbs are in there. And Mike goes, all this extra junk we put in here. He's like, keep it simple, right? That's all. They always say, keep your special stipulations simple. When you're doing stuff like that, you want it to be legally enforceable as well. Writing a contract and writing a weak stipulation makes it so that it's not necessarily enforceable, if that makes sense. Go ahead, Mr. Atticus.
I think, I have a buyer who, the seller wants to leave their furniture.
All right.
And it's in the contract and it's written out. Should we do a separate contract to purchase it for like $10 to make it?
Yep. So the question is you have a seller that wants to leave all the furniture. The buyer is okay with it. Do you need to do a separate contract? That is a bill of sale.
Bill of sale, okay.
Bill of sale. And if the buyer wants it and is truly buying these items, it should be separated, line itemed, all of that stuff. You can also do it, I've seen it, all furniture to remain in home at no cost to buyer in special stipulations.
Okay.
Or somebody just did one. Was it you that did one with all the furniture staying except the main bedroom set, right? Except the primary bedroom set. That's all other furniture is being removed or is staying. That's how it was written. So that gets really, really weak at times. What happens if the seller takes the refrigerator and the buyer thought it was staying? What happens if you don't have it spelled out? You're asking for trouble, right? So be detailed. The more detailed in your contract, the easier it is to interpret and the easier it is to not have disputes. Make sense? Make sense? Any other questions? We good to go? Starting to rain? Enjoy the day.